In the far edge of neutral space, the alien ship Silver Reach drifted slowly toward the meeting point. Inside, the Galactic Peace Council's delegation sat in silence. This was the first official contact with humans. Many believed humans were still young and harmless, only a few decades into faster-than-light travel. The mission was simple talk: negotiate trade and set boundaries. It was meant to be peaceful. The alien Captain Varlek adjusted the navigation controls. His large black eyes scanned the empty starfield ahead. He was calm, but his claws tapped on the armrest, a sign of quiet unease. Approaching coordinates, the pilot announced. Varlek nodded. Is any sign of the human escort? The sensor officer looked up from the glowing console. Not yet, sir. Only background radiation. He paused, frowning. Wait, something's appearing on long-range scans. It's big. Varlek tilted his head. Define big. The officer hesitated. It's very large, sir. The signature is bigger than most space stations, and it's not moving. The crew leaned toward their screens, confused. The meeting point was supposed to be empty except for a small human diplomatic ship. Instead, something enormous was floating there, blocking part of the stars. No beacon, no broadcast, no identification code. The Silver Reach slowed to a crawl. The closer they came, the more the darkness ahead seemed wrong. It wasn't space, it was a shape, a shadow, stretching beyond the edges of their viewport. Varlek's frills twitched. Magnify. The view snapped closer, and the crew froze. It was a ship, not just a ship, a giant. The hull stretched 4 kilometers, a black surface broken by strange lines of light, like deep scars glowing faintly blue. The design was unlike anything in the Council's databases. There were no standard engine pods, no visible bridge, just smooth armored plates and colossal structures jutting from its spine. Weapons, docking bays, no one could tell. The alien ambassador, a soft-voiced scholar named Revan, leaned forward. There's no record, the sensor officer whispered. But it's human. It must be. Varlek's mouth tightened. He opened a cum channel. Unknown vessel. This is the Silver Reach delegation of the Galactic Peace Council. We request identification. For several seconds, only silence replied.
Oh.
Then a voice came through, calm, controlled, and unmistakably human. This is the Sentinel. You are cleared for docking. No greetings, no explanations. Just that. The crew exchanged glances. Revan's voice trembled slightly. They bring this to a peace meeting? The Silver Reach crept forward, swallowed by the shadow of the monster ship. Its hull blocked out starlight completely, so massive that it felt like they were entering a cave in space. Small, blinking lights dotted the surface, each the size of a fighter craft. The aliens felt as if the ship itself was watching them, as the docking clamps locked with a deep metallic thud. The alien crew felt an odd vibration through the hull, like the slow heartbeat of something alive. Varlek was the first to step into the airlock. Beyond was a long corridor, taller and wider than any starship hallway should be. The walls shimmered with a strange metal that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. A human officer waited. For them, tall, wearing a dark uniform with no visible rank badges, his expression was unreadable. "Welcome aboard," he said simply, turning to lead them deeper inside. As they walked, the aliens noticed the floor was heavier here. Their steps felt slow, weighed down. The walls were lined with strange panels and gun ports. They were covered, but the shapes were obvious turrets, hidden behind armor. Every 20 meters, a faint hum pulsed through the corridor, as if the ship itself was breathing in and out. Revan whispered to Varlek, "This is not a diplomatic ship. This is a fortress." The human officer didn't react, though his pace was steady and unhurried. Occasionally, alien eyes caught a shadow moving just beyond the lights, too big for a human. Gliding silently along parallel corridors, they reached a wide chamber, unlike any meeting room the delegation had seen before. The table was huge, made of black stone that seemed to drink in the light. On the far wall, a massive viewing window looked out into space. Framing the silver reach like a toy, Varlek took his seat cautiously. The human officer stood at the head of the table. "Our commander will join you shortly," he said, then left without another word. For a few moments, only the sound of the ship's deep hum filled the room. The alien delegates avoided speaking too loudly, as if afraid the walls could hear them. Suddenly, a faint ripple passed across the viewing window, not outside in space, but on the glass itself, like a shadow moving underwater. Revan's skin flushed pale. "Did you see that?" he asked quietly. Varlek's claws tapped on the table again. "Yes. And I do not think it was a trick of the eyes." A door opened, and in walked a human in a dark coat. His face was calm, his movements precise. He didn't sit down. He stood at the head of the table, hands clasped behind his back. "I am Commander Hale," he said. His voice was even, but there was something in his tone, something heavy, like unspoken warning. "We are glad you came. This meeting is important." Revan found his courage. "I bring this," he gestured, toward the massive window, indicating the ship. "Why meet us inside a warship that could level worlds?" Hale's eyes moved to him, because words are only safe when spoken from a place of strength. The answer was simple, but it sent a cold ripple through the room. Varlek opened his mouth to question further, but the commander continued, "You came to talk. Good, we will talk. But you should know there are reasons this ship exists. Reasons I will share when the time is right." Outside the window, the black hull of the Sentinel stretched endlessly, its faint glowing scars pulsing like veins. For the first time since the meeting began, the alien delegates wished they had stayed home. And somewhere deep inside the ship, far below their feet, something shifted, as if it had heard every word. The alien delegation did not sleep well aboard the Sentinel. The guest quarters were larger than expected, but the air felt heavy, almost pressing down on them. The walls seemed to hum softly in the dark, like a faint heartbeat. Varlek lay awake, staring at the faint blue glow that leaked from a seam in the ceiling. He had commanded ships for decades, but none had ever made him feel like prey inside a predator's mouth. When morning came, they were escorted by 2 human officers through another section of the ship. The corridors here were even wider, as if made for something far larger than humans. Their footsteps echoed. Every now and then, the delegation passed a sealed bulkhead with no markings. Guarded by silent soldiers, the alien scientist, Jor-El, could not help his curiosity. He stopped to run his hand across one of the walls. It was smooth and warm, not like normal metal. As his fingers lingered, the surface rippled slightly, just for a second like water, disturbed by a drop. He snatched his hand back. Varlek caught. "The motion? What happened?" he asked quietly. Jor-El hesitated. It moved. The wall moved. Before Varlek could respond, the human escort turned his head slightly. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "It reacts sometimes. Don't touch it too long." He kept walking. The aliens exchanged. Uneasy looks, but followed. Their path eventually opened into a cavernous chamber deep in the ship's core. Massive pillars rose into darkness, each one covered in unfamiliar markings that glowed faintly. Air was warmer here, filled with a low, constant vibration. "This is one of our primary reactor halls," the escort said. "Please don't stray from the walkway." Revan glanced over the railing, and his throat tightened. Far below, something moved, a vast shape shifting in the shadows, too big to fully see. For a heartbeat, it almost looked like a huge mechanical limb withdrawing into the darkness. "What's down there?" he asked. The human gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. The ship's heart. They left the reactor hall and entered another section. Here, strange devices lined the walls, barrels, emitters, and arrays that looked like weapons, but were unfamiliar to any alien technology. Jor-El's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is no escort vessel. The ship could fight an entire fleet." Varlek nodded, and it wouldn't lose. By the time they reached the designated meeting room, the aliens had seen enough to know one thing. The Sentinel was not a normal warship. It was something older, heavier, and more dangerous. But what disturbed them most was that the humans never spoke of it with pride or threats. They acted as if the ship was Necessary. As the delegation sat down, the lights in the room flickered. Briefly, the walls seemed to hum louder. Varlik frowned. Bow fluctuation? The human officer checked a small wrist display. Not exactly. The ship is aware you are here. Out. Sometimes it reacts. No one spoke for several seconds. Then the officer added, almost casually, "You'll get used to it." But the aliens knew they wouldn't, and somewhere in the deep, hidden chambers of the Sentinel, the same vast shape they had glimpsed earlier moved again, its slow shifting making the whole ship tremble. The third day aboard the SANT began with an invitation that did not feel like a choice. A human aide appeared at the alien delegation's quarters, his voice polite but firm. "The commander requests your presence in the central observation ring." Now, Varlik led his team through the corridors, noticing that the air felt warmer the deeper they went. The ship's faint hum had grown louder, almost like the breathing of some giant creature. Even Revan, usually eager to comment, kept his head down. When the doors to the observation ring opened, the delegation stepped into a space unlike anything they had seen before. It was a vast circular chamber with walls of transparent material, showing an almost complete view of the surrounding space. Stars wheeled silently in every direction. But their eyes were drawn to the inside of the chamber first. The floor was marked with patterned symbols and lines in a strange silver metal, stretching from the center to the walls like the spokes of a wheel. At the center was a raised platform with a single black console, surface rippling faintly as if alive. Commander Hale was already there, standing with his hands behind his back. "Welcome," he said. "This is the ship's mind chamber." Revan blinked. Mind chamber. Hale nodded. "This is where the Sentinel thinks, where it speaks." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the console's surface shifted. Light pulsed across the patterns in the floor, moving toward the walls, and the air took on a strange vibration. The alien scientist Jor-El flinched as a faint whisper seemed to pass through his head, not in any language he knew, but still somehow understood. "I see you." Revan's eyes widened. "Who?" The voice came again, softer but deeper, as though the ship itself was breathing the words into their minds. "You are inside me." Varlik's frills stiffened. He glanced at Hale. "Your ship is speaking." Hale did not smile. "Yes, but it doesn't speak to everyone." The silver lines on the floor brightened for a moment, then faded again. The voice vanished. The hum in the air dropped back to its usual rhythm. Revan's hands shook slightly. "What is this vessel, Commander?" "No human technology can do this." "The Council's archives have nothing even close," Hale interrupted, his tone low, "and they never will. You are here to discuss peace. That's still our goal. But there are things in this galaxy and outside it that you're not ready to face." Jor-El stepped forward, frustration creeping into his voice. "Then tell us what's coming. Why hide it?" Hale's eyes stayed locked on him. "Because knowing will not save you, but being ready might." Before the aliens could press him further, a low alarm sounded, 3 short tones, then silence. Hale glanced at the transparent walls. Far in the distance, tiny specks of light moved against the stars. They were too far to identify, but they were approaching fast. Hale tapped a control on the console. The black surface rippled again, and the Sentinel's hum deepened, vibrating through the bones of everyone in the room. "You wanted to know why this ship exists?" he said. "You may find out sooner than you think." The alien delegates turned to the windows, staring at the distant lights growing brighter. None of them realized they were holding their breath. The distant lights grew larger with every passing minute, cutting through the darkness like hunting eyes. No one in the observation ring spoke. The silence felt heavy, broken only by the steady, deep pulse of the Sentinel's engines far below. Varlik leaned toward the glass, his black eyes narrowing. "Those are not Council ships," he said quietly. Commander Hale did not answer. Instead, he tapped his wrist console, bringing up a faint holographic projection of the approaching vessels. The image shimmered above the central platform, revealing jagged silhouette ships shaped like blades, their hulls covered in cruel, hooked protrusions. Revan's voice trembled. "I know those designs. They're old, very old. From the Earthric warlords, a species that went extinct before the Council was formed. Jor-El frowned. Extinct ships don't fly, Lay finally spoke. These do. The alien stared at him, confused and alarmed. Varlek asked. Hale looked toward the approaching shapes. The ships kept closing in, moving in perfect formation. Even from this distance, their hulls glinted in a strange, oily way, like metal, that had been grown instead of forged. Jor-El's breathing quickened. Why are they coming here? Do they know about this ship? They know enough, Hale said, and they want to see if it can bleed. Before anyone could reply, the sentinels. Lights dimmed for a heartbeat, then returned brighter than before. Somewhere deep inside, a low, resonant tone vibrated through the hull, so deep it felt more like a shiver in the bones than a sound. The alien delegates exchanged worried looks. That, Hale said, was the ship waking up. Varlek stiffened. Waking up? The commander turned toward him. You've walked its halls. You've seen the walls shift. You've felt the gravity press harder than normal. Did you think that was just engineering? Revan's voice was almost a whisper. It's alive. Hale didn't confirm or deny it. He only said it's aware, and right now it's watching those ships. Outside, the blade-shaped vessels drew closer. They made no attempt to communicate, no request for docking or negotiation. They simply moved forward, silent and steady. A faint ripple passed across the observation windows again, like something massive shifting between the sentinel and the void beyond. Varlek felt his claws tighten against the railing. Then, without warning, an enormous shape detached itself from the sentinel's dark hull. The alien delegates gasped. It was another ship, sleek, armored, bristling with weapons emerging from a hidden bay large enough to swallow the Silver Reach hole. Revan turned to Hale, stunned. You brought more? Hale's eyes stayed on the approaching fleet. The sentinel never travels alone. Somewhere deep in the monster ship's corridors. Heavy machinery shifted, doors sealed, and hidden weapon mounts began to rise from the walls. The entire vessel seemed to be holding its breath, waiting, and still. The blade-shaped ships came on. The blade-shaped ships entered visual range, their hulls glinting with an oily shimmer that caught the starlight. Up close, their age was impossible to ignore. These were not the clean lines of modern shipbuilding. Their armor was pitted, scarred, and patched in places, as if they had survived wars no one remembered. Yet they moved like predators. The alien delegates stood frozen in the observation ring, watching them approach. Varlek's frills twitched nervously. They are not broadcasting any identification signal. This is an armed approach. Commander Hale didn't flinch. They won't announce themselves. They're here to test us. Revan shook his head. Test this close to a neutral meeting point? The council Hell cut in, isn't here. And that's exactly why they came. The room went silent. Outside, the approaching ships began to shift formation, splitting into two flanking groups. A third group stayed in the center, moving directly toward the sentinel. The alien scientist. Jor-El leaned closer to the glass, studying them with a mixture of fascination and dread. They aren't scanning, he murmured. No active sweeps, no cum signals. That's unnatural. They don't need to scan, Hale said. They already know what we are. The lights in the observation ring dimmed slightly, and that same deep vibration returned, stronger now, pulsing through the deck like a slow drum beat. The floor beneath their feet seemed to tighten, almost as if the ship was coiling itself. Varlek spoke quietly to Revan. This isn't just a warship. It feels like an animal before the strike. Before Revan could reply, a faint, almost imperceptible sound filled the room, a whisper that slid straight into their minds. Intruders. Jor-El flinched, looking around. Did you hear that? Hale's expression didn't change. The ship did. Far below, in the hidden chambers of the Sentinel, small, angular drones began to move, sliding silently along dark corridors. They merged from the hull like black insects spreading out to patrol the space around the monster ship. The alien delegation exchanged worried looks. This wasn't how diplomatic ships behaved. This was the behavior of something expecting violence. Then, without warning, one of the blade-shaped vessels broke formation. It accelerated, moving straight toward the Silver Reach. The alien delegation's own transport docked to the Sentinel. Varlik's voice hardened. That's a threat display. If they fire, they won't get the chance, Hell said, his tone flat. Outside, a section of the Sentinel's armor shifted, opening like the plates of some giant beast's skull. From within, a weapon emerged, if it could even be called that. It wasn't a cannon in the traditional sense. It was a smooth, black cylinder, pulsing with faint blue light, as if something inside it was alive. Jor stared. That's not standard human technology. No, Hale said. It's older. The blade ship slowed as if sensing danger. The Sentinel did not fire. It simply waited, the weapon glowing brighter with every heartbeat. Somewhere deep in the ship's walls. That whisper came again, louder this time. It should not have come here. The blade-shaped ships hung in the dark, their flanking maneuver incomplete. The one that had moved toward the Silver Reach now drifted in hesitation, as though some instinct warned it to keep its distance. The alien delegates could feel that something had changed in the air. The Sentinel's deep vibration had grown into a constant low thrumming, almost like a growl. The walls seemed warmer, the floor heavier. Commander Hale stood still, eyes fixed on the nearest enemy ship. They're testing our limits, he said quietly. I think this is a game of nerve. Varlik's voice was tight. And what happens if they decide to strike? Hola glanced at him. Then they'll see what the Sentinel is for. Without warning, the lights across the observation ring dimmed to near darkness. Outside the massive window, the black hull of the Sentinel began to shift. Plates of armor slid aside, revealing layers beneath that glowed faintly with a cold blue-white light. The alien scientist Jor-El leaned forward, eyes wide. It's unfolding. From deep within the ship came a single heavy pulse, so deep it was more felt than heard. It rolled through the air, through their bones, through the glass. And then the weapon they had seen earlier powered up, but it wasn't alone. Dozens no hundreds of smaller turrets emerged across the Sentinel's hull, each one locking silently onto a different target. They moved in eerie unison, like the limbs of some massive creature obeying a single thought. The blade ships hesitated, their formation stalling. Hale's voice was calm, but there was a weight to it now. You're about to understand why we built her. The aliens didn't speak. The first enemy vessel made its move, breaking forward and firing a stream of bright, needle-like projectiles toward the Sentinel. They never reached the hull. A translucent barrier shimmered into existence, the impact sparking harmlessly against it before fading to nothing. Revan's frills flattened in shock. Shields. That thick or impossible. Hale didn't look away from the battle. Not for this ship. The Sentinel finally answered. A beam of pale blue light erupted from the central weapon, moving so fast it seemed instantaneous. It struck the enemy's ship head and end. There was no explosion, no debris. The vessel simply ceased to exist, erased. From space as though it had never been, silence filled the observation ring. The remaining blade ships froze, their formation breaking apart. Some turned sharply, fleeing into the dark. Others tried to scatter, but the Sentinel was awake now, all across its surface. The turrets opened fire, streams of energy crossing the void with surgical precision. Every shot found its target. There was no wasted movement, no hesitation, just swift, absolute destruction. Varlik felt his claws curl into the railing. This isn't a battle, he whispered. It's an execution. Hall finally turned to face them. Now you know why we asked you here. This wasn't about peace talks. It was about showing you what's coming and what's already. Here, far beyond the wreckage, in the black between stars, faint ripples moved, shapes too far away to see clearly. The wreckage of the blade ships drifted silently, glowing faintly in the starlight. Pieces of their shattered hulls tumbled past the Sentinel, but the monster ship did not move to collect them. It simply stood still, silent, its weapons retracting. Back into the black armor, as if nothing had happened. The alien delegates were still frozen in the observation ring. None of them had spoken since the last enemy vessel was erased. Even Varlek, who had faced war before, felt a cold weight in his chest. Finally, Revan broke the silence. If this ship is meant for war, then what enemy could possibly require this? Commander Hale didn't answer right away. He looked out at the void beyond the debris field, his jaw set. What you saw just now, those weren't the enemy. They were scavengers' remnants from a dead empire that should have stayed dead. They weren't what this ship was built to fight. The alien scientist Jor-El frowned. Then what is? Hale turned to face them, his eyes colder now. Something the galaxy has forgotten. Or maybe something it chose to forget. He touched the black console at the center of the ring. The viewing glass changed, zooming far beyond the battle site. The stars warped as the image leapt across light years. It finally settled on a patch of empty space, or at least, it seemed. Empty at first. Then something moved. It was distant, barely visible, but its size was undeniable. Against the background of stars, a shadow shifted, formless and slow. A faint glimmer of light rippled along its edges, as though it was covered in something metallic or armored. Revan felt his throat tighten, but that's not a ship. No, Hale said. It's not. The image flickered to a different perspective, showing readings and energy spikes. The data scrolling beside the shadow made no sense to the aliens, numbers far too high for any known vessel. Movement patterns that suggested it wasn't bound by normal space at all. Jorl single quotes, his voice dropped to a whisper. How far? Hale's answer was blunt. Far enough that we have time. Close enough that we don't have much. Varlek's frills twitched sharply. And you think the Sentinel can stop it? Hale's gaze didn't waver. No. I think the Sentinel can survive it long enough for the rest of you to decide whether you'll fight or hide. The alien delegation exchanged uneasy glances. For all its terrifying power, even the monster ship was not presented as a final answer, only as the first line. The viewing glass returned to the wreckage outside, where the remains of the blade ships drifted like warning signs. The Sentinels was quieter now, but still present like the breathing of something that had not gone back to sleep, and deep within its unseen corridors. A voice only Hale could hear whispered again. It's closer than they think. The alien delegation's final hours aboard the Sentinel were spent in silence. No one dared to question the ship's purpose anymore. They had seen it erase an entire strike force in seconds. They had heard it whisper without moving a single mouth. They had watched a shadow larger than worlds stir in the distant dark. Commander Hale escorted them back toward the docking bay, his pace steady, his voice quiet. The Council will want a full report. You'll tell them what you saw, and you'll tell them the truth. Varlek glanced at him. And if they don't believe us, Hale's eyes were cold. They will. Or they'll be the first to vanish when it arrives. As they moved through the Sentinel's massive corridors, the alien delegates noticed something strange. The heavy weapon ports they had seen earlier were sealed again, but faint heat shimmer still radiated from them. It was as if the ship was holding its fire just beneath the surface, ready to unleash it again without warning. The hum in the air had softened, yet it never went away. Revan couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was still watching them, measuring them. When they reached the docking platform, the airlock to the Silver Reach was already open. The alien crew moved quickly, eager to be back on familiar ground. But just before boarding, Jor-El paused, placed one hand on the dark wall of the Sentinel. Almost in farewell, the surface rippled under his touch. A voice slid into his mind, soft but heavy like the weight of deep oceans. You will tell them, Jorls. Breath caught. Tell them what? He whispered. The voice answered with a single chilling phrase. That they are not ready. He withdrew his hand quickly, his pulse racing, stepped into the airlock without looking back. Minutes later, the Silver Reach drifted away from the monster ship. From a distance, the Sentinel looked almost still. A black shape against the stars, its scars of blue light, dim and quiet. But the alien delegates knew better. They didn't speak during the journey home. Each of them carried the same thought, though none dared to say it aloud. The galaxy was living in borrowed time. and far away, in the deep cold beyond mapped space. The vast shadow moved again closer now. On the bridge of the Sentinel, Hale stood alone, watching the dark. The ship's voice murmured in his mind once more, "They have seen me. The hunt will come sooner." Hale didn't flinch. He only answered in a low voice, "Let them come." The Sentinel's hum deepened, the faint blue scars along its hull brightening once more, like a predator baring its teeth in the dark.